r/AskReddit. Teachers of Reddit. What's the saddest thing you've ever found out about a student? That the reason that my grade 12 student was falling asleep during math class was because he was working 40 hours a week to pay his parents' bills. I saw his pay stub. He was a great kid too. One of my ed professors told us a story about a student that fell asleep every day. She told us that she found out years later it was because a student had to stay up all night because one of the parents would molest a younger sibling if everyone was asleep, trying to keep it vague for obvious reasons. Edit. This is getting a lot of attention. Things like this happen all the time. Teachers have limited power and training and can only do so much. I encourage everyone to get involved with their local school district. You don't have to have a kid in the district to go to board meetings and ask questions and give input. I've been in education for 2 years. Some say that we can change the world, and some say that's unreasonable. There's a happy medium in there somewhere. If we can change even one person's life for the better, then we've changed their whole world. Reddit. Let's do it. Let's work hard to change as many worlds as possible. Forgot parents could be even worse than the original story for a second. I just discovered this today. Actually, one of my brightest anatomy students, we'll call her Molly, is going on our school's spring break trip to France. While chatting with the teacher chaperone for that trip today, the French teacher mentioned that she bought Molly some clothes and was wondering if Molly was wearing any of them today. When we asked why the teacher had bought Molly clothes, we got this tale. Molly's mom died while she was in middle school. Molly's dad is a drug addict or alcoholic. Molly, her 2 siblings, and her dad were all living with grandpa, who splits his year between in and FL. Last year, grandpa and dad had a falling out. Grandpa kicked dad out of the house and called CPS for the kids. Since then, Molly and her 2 siblings have been placed in foster care. The only reason Molly is able to afford the trip to France is because grandpa is feeling guilty and is assuaging his guilt by financing the trip. Back to the clothes. Molly has about 3 outfits that she rotates through. And going on a 10-day trip to France, she simply needs more than that. On top of the crappy home life, Molly had saved up money to take on the trip with her, about 300 euros. Her dad visited last weekend and stole it. So, she's now using her social security check for the month. The teacher has bought her clothing, is buying her travel size toiletries, and is covering her tip for the tour guide. And when the teacher gives Molly all of these things, Molly doesn't even know how to react or accept them. Her exact words were, "Why? You didn't have to do this." Molly is such a bright student. She has so much potential. She is so sweet and motivated and just an amazing person. Learning this about her past broke my heart today and has been weighing on me ever since. Edit. The outpouring of love and support for Molly has moved me to tears tonight. Thank you all for your generosity and kindness. I wish I could continue replying to each comment, but this teacher needs some sleep. I will post updates tomorrow and PM anyone that has sent a request. Thank you. Fellow Redditors, you have restored my faith in humanity after such a heartbreaking story. Edit 2. Search for Molly's trip to France for updates. I work for a major clothing retailer. Can you send me Molly's clothing sizes? I'd like to send you some clothing for her. Edit. Did not expect this to blow up. Reddit, you are incredibly kind. Your words made me tear up. I need to go to bed. Op is planning on messaging me with details. Not sure where I'd post a follow up, but we should try to respect Molly's privacy as she's in an impossible situation. This isn't about karma. It's about making sure a young lady has a kick-ass trip to France where she can focus on learning and experiencing and not worry about what she's going to wear the next day. You're awesome. When I taught 2nd grade, I had a student who walked kind of funny. It took me about a week to realize that it was because his shoes were too small. I got him some new shoes at Kmart because kid shoes are cheap. I told him it was so he would be able to run really fast in gym class. I found out he was living with his grandma because his dad was in prison for killing his mom. I started buying him clothes after that. At the end of the school year, I was packing up some boxes and one of them said snacks. The boy looked at me with great big eyes and asked if I really had snakes in the box. I cried over the fact that I'd promoted a kid to 3rd grade who really couldn't read. When I read Who Walked Kind of Funny, I thought this was going a different direction. My stomach dropped at that line. A student disappeared for a few weeks. I found out later she tried to kill herself. Her mother's boyfriend had been raping her every night for years. She never came back to school. A classmate was repeatedly aped by her stepdad. Everyone found out when she killed him. Good. I hope she didn't get into a lot of trouble for that. At the least she could have called it self-defense. I had a student who lived at the homeless shelter. She was an A student. Super nice kid. And had a baby. Her mom came into the shelter and got them all kicked out. Another student, also an A student and just the nicest person, told us that she couldn't go to her senior prom because her mom couldn't pay the electric bill. So all of her money that she worked for had to go to paying bills instead of a dress. The teachers pitched in and helped her go. Because if anyone deserved a nice prom, it was her. People would be absolutely amazed too if they knew how many school children live in by the week motels. And it doesn't correlate with the kids who act up. Most of the motel kids are good students and most of the parents are highly involved. They are among the most likely parents to show up for presentations and parent-teacher conferences. But mom and dad can't save enough to get into an apartment, so they all live in one room in a motel for years on end. It's mostly 2-parent Hispanic families. This is epidemic. Source: wife is an elementary school teacher in the South. It's a vicious cycle, because I bet those motels are more expensive in rent. Teaching in low-income schools really changed my outlook on poverty. It's so hard to break out, no matter how hard you work. While I was a teacher's ed, we had a child who was being abused and not cared for well at home. We ended up placing calls to CPS. It was rough. Dad would drive the kid to school drunk, or the kid would come in with a black eye or bruised cheek and say, "Oh, mom had a bad night." Too young to realize it wasn't okay. That one was rough. To anyone young people being abused at home, if you have tried CPS and they won't help, and you have tried the police and they won't help, try your school. I tried all 3 growing up. Didn't get help till I was 16. By then, the damage was done. I want to let anyone out there currently going through abuse or recently escaping abuse, don't let the abuse define you. For the longest I was very angry. Still am. But it was so easy to sabotage myself and blame my past. I realized even though I didn't live with my abusers anymore, they were still controlling my life. Take control of your life and do what makes you happy, instead of living for them. I was working in a severely handicapped classroom once as a long-term substitute for an aide. We had this one kid who I will call Johnny. He was in 4th grade and couldn't communicate by speaking. Plus he was really developmentally behind. He would kind of stare off into space with a blank expression on his face for most of the day. But for this classroom he was very functional. When I first started, if you were walking with him the moment you turned your head, he instinctively knew and took off running. It was like his personal joke on you, because you would have to chase after him like an idiot while other classes are going on. Well, after a while I was put in charge of taking him out to the swing set. He loved going with me because he was a big heavy set kid and all the female teachers were not strong enough to give him a good push. And boy, did I push him. I mean, I almost had this kid going inverted on his swing. It scared the hell out of me. But he loved it. Through sign language he would beg me to go higher and higher. For a good couple of months we did this every day. Multiple times a day with him signing, "Higher, higher," and me yelling, "Hold on, hold on." I'm convinced it was the greatest thrill of his life thus far. Then one day we were getting ready to go home, and he found out that it was my last day. We were watching a movie. He did his blank stare straight ahead. But this time, tears were pouring down his cheeks. He couldn't talk, but was kind of moaning. One of the senior aides suggested I sit next to him to calm him down. So I did. We just sat there watching the movie. Toward the end he reached over and patted me on the knee a few times. I looked over and he was just staring blankly ahead without any expression on his face. but I knew what he was trying to convey to me. That is the day that I found out that Johnny was one of my best friends and I would probably never see him again. Typo. E2, thanks for the gold, kind stranger. Ducking neighbors and their industrial sized onion choppers. Tell them to stop chopping while you are trying to cry. I had a very smart kid failing my class because he wasn't turning in any homework. When I asked him why, he told me he lived in a hotel room with 12 other people. There wasn't space, and it was too loud for him to focus. I remember in like 5th grade there was a girl in my class who always smelled bad, and I didn't like her because of it. 6 years later I was bicycling on the local rail trail with some friends and we stopped at an old abandoned paper mill. There were some old abandoned boxcars there, and we started looking in them. I saw homework from the smelly girl, dating back to 5th grade. Apparently they'd been homeless and living in a boxcar. I felt really hitty for how I'd been to her after that. I think I read those books when I was younger. Not a teacher, but I volunteered in an after-school program that tutored kids. My group was 15 years old. So, I have this extremely bright kid in my group. When we talk about anything else it was clear that he was super smart. When we did homework together he was doing great and understood everything perfectly. He even helped the other kids. However, he would fail every single one of his tests. And not just a few mistake here and there. On a few subject. No. He totally completely failing every classes. It didn't make sense at all. So there had to be something else going on. I talked to my supervisor about it. And he promised me to look into it. Turn out his older brother had been held back, and they were in the same classes. The father would beat up the younger one every time he had better marks than his older brother. Because Yo was making the true air luck bad. That's next level ducked up. Did the younger one get his grades back in check after your supervisor found out? I don't know. Child Protection Service got involved, and the kid went to live with his aunt in another town. The brother with a foster family. I never saw him again. I can only hope that once he was in another school and far from his abusive family.